Welcome everyone to Flyover Fallout. We got a point, Santi.
And some goals.
And some goals. We've got plenty to talk about today, that's for sure. I really didn't ever think we'd be coming away from LA. Like, to be honest, if we're, Monday morning center backing it here, never really thought we'd come away disappointed with a point at LAFC after scoring 2 goals. It's crazy how much can change in 90 minutes.
Yeah, it's crazy. A point that maybe like I wasn't expecting it. But in the end, even though you get a point, I was like, oh, could have been more. But it could have been also 0 points if Ben Lund had not saved that PK.
And more. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was going back through the game, and I had completely forgotten about the Conrad Wallum when he had to go out for before he got subbed for Akil Watts when he was getting checked. There was a 1v1 chance. I mean, Ben
Mm-hmm.
Lund did more than just the PK, even though that was the show stealer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, you're right. It could have gone both ways, and we conceded a ton of chances for LAFC. So, which we didn't. That was kind of expected, though. It's just wild how there's so many fans walking away from this one thinking they're just disappointed from not taking 3 points on the road against a team that we had previously not scored a single goal against.
Right.
The perception of this one it's tricky, I would say, to say the least, to get a handle on.
Yeah, and it's obviously a different LAFC. They had a lot of turnover, but still, it's a team that you haven't scored on, haven't gotten a win against. So yeah, in the end, yeah, I welcome the point, but it's still like if you look at the table, like LAFC is one of those teams that is mid-table, so it would have been good to
Yeah.
get those points, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's their form, like we talked about last week, their form hasn't been great this season, and I think their XG numbers besides yesterday hadn't been setting the world on fire. Like they hadn't been doing a whole lot compared to us. They've just been more efficient. And yeah, we're going to get into all the moments. We're going to get into all the controversial plays or the noteworthy moments that are leaving City fans frustrated. But I think it was an overall good performance from St. Louis City, at least in the second half. I'm probably not going to spend too much time on the first half because it was boring. It was on the seat of we were on the edge of our seats just waiting for LAFC, I think, to score. But yeah, so we'll get into it all. Are you ready to do the pod recording? All right. Welcome in everyone to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker, joined as always by my friend in soccer, Santiago Beltran, for another edition of Fallout. This week we look at a 2-2 draw, City against LAFC in Los Angeles, and it's coming away with a bit of an odd feeling because we're disappointed after having not taken 3 points on the road to a team that we had yet to score a goal against in 4 games prior. But yet we played almost up until the whistle like we should have won this one. Santi, you were on the call. How are you doing? And what are your day after thoughts on this one?
Doing great, Matt. Obviously, after you allowed a goal in the final minutes of the game, at a game that maybe you stole towards the end too, like it's disappointing. But yeah, City did some good things on the second half, and Ben Lund was instrumental yesterday. He had a few good saves, so it could have been a different result too. But so it's disappointing when you score a goal towards the end and you think you're gonna get the 3 points, and then last play of the game or second to last, then everything disappears, and you get that feeling that you could have done more.
For a game that had us all a little bored in the first half with what City was producing in the attacking portion of the field, I think we had all the excitement we could contain and really handle in the second half, especially towards the end of the game. There was the ups and downs were the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. But we're going to get into all that here in just a minute. We usually start off with our kickoff looking at our starting 11, but I do want to give some good news for anyone who hasn't seen my posts on social media. Edu Leuven, we finally have an update on Edu Leuven that we can provide before kickoff to this game, we found out via Tom Ackerman's show on KMOX on his Sunday morning interview with Lutz Pfannenstiel that Edu Leuven has returned to training, and he is expecting to return and be integrated in full this coming week. So while we record this the day after on Monday, you can look to Tuesday and Wednesday updates that hopefully have Edu Leuven in them as a training participant. He will need to get fit after having time off before he sees match time. So who knows whether he'll be available for Seattle next week. The good news is Edu Leuven has returned to training. And that in and of itself is reason to celebrate, regardless of if you're upset at this match, if you're glass half full with this match against LAFC. There is a bright spot on the horizon with the return of Edu Leuven.
Yeah, that's great news. A player who has been missed for sure. Obviously, to me, the person is always first. The personal stuff is first. Is highest priority than soccer. But it's great to know that he's gonna be back with the team. Obviously, he needs time to get fit and be ready to play. But it's great to see Edu Leuven back.
The timing is probably going to be one of those passing in the night type of things with what we're going to talk about with Alfredo Morales next week, but it's good news nonetheless. Let's take it into the starting 11 for this match as we look to the 2-2 draw against LAFC. Santi, Ben Lundt in goal, no surprise there. In what could be one of his final starts as a regular City goalkeeper, with hopefully the return of Roman Berkey on the horizon, though on turf in Seattle next week. You never know how that's going to work out, but going to be excited to see Roman Berkey return. Ben Lundt has just been doing fantastic. So he was in net. Back line, another returning player, Jonas Horn as the left center back, Timo Baumgartel central center back, and Josh Yarrow as the right center back. We had Conrad Wallem on the left wing, Tomas Ostrak and Alfredo Morales as your central midfielders, Kyle Hebert as your right wing back, and then Marcel Hartl up in that roaming 10 role with Klaus and Cedric Teuchert as our starting forwards. Tomas Ostrak's first start. Jonas Horn's first start since back from injury. What did you make of this 11? And I guess prior to seeing them on the field, what did you make of this 11?
Well, it was a little bit of a surprise to see Tomas Ostrak getting his first start, just considering the amount of time he had appeared during the season. But I think at the same time, once I saw the lineup, I was like, well, this is a way for Melberg to give Hartel like more liberty, more flexibility, maybe more of an offensive role instead of having to go back and defend so much or go back to get the ball. So I really like that. And seeing Jonas Horn back also was good. We were talking offline when we were predicting the starting 11. We weren't sure if he was going to be on the starting 11. We thought Kyle Hebert was going to be one of the center backs, but in the end, he was one of the wing backs, which is fine.
Yep.
I was when I saw the lineup, I was like, is Hebert the right wing back or the left wing back? Maybe Wallem is gonna go to the right, but in the end, Wallem stayed on the left. But yeah, it was a good lineup considering what the team had available, and at the same time left some players on the bench that could have been useful on the second half. Just thinking Celio Pompeu, who had started the last few games, and basically to put Ostrak in, Celio had to go to the bench. But I saw it as he may be important on the second half, and was also not sure how long Ostrak was going to last, considering it was his first start of the year.
Yeah, that's a good point on Tomas Ostrak. Is he hadn't played more than 45 all season, and so what ended up happening with Tomas Ostrak, we'll talk about it during the flow, is he was subbed out after kind of voicing that he was tired, or in conversations with the team, they understood him to be tired. So he would have lasted per Olaf 10 to 15 minutes into the second half, but they decided to be a little more cautious, get him out as he's ramping up his fitness in that level. And there's nothing against Ostrak in that way. He had been running his heart out in the first half. The interesting thing to me, though, is it was it was like that. It was moving Marcel Hartl up higher in the field. It was keeping Tomas Ostrak as a central midfielder, as opposed to switching those two. So your obvious preference is to get Marcel Hartl more involved in the attack, and we wanted to see that. We were excited to see that. But just looking strictly at Tomas Ostrak, a player who up until prior to last season, we never thought as a deeper lying central midfielder. We thought of him as an attacker, maybe a winger, but definitely more involved in the attacking half. And here lately, Olaf seems to be continuing the trend that we saw last season of the evolution of Tomas Ostrak in more of a box-to-box central role. His average positioning, if you look at his heat map, he's overwhelmingly in the defensive half. I thought he did fine. We didn't have a lot of build through our central midfield in the first half, especially. So you could argue that it wasn't the most successful outlook, at least in ball progression, but we kept a clean sheet throughout the first half. So we did that.
Maybe not in terms of ball progression, but I think he had a great half. Defensively, he was very good. He had 2 great tackles in the box. One of them was a ball he was actually lost, but he went back and was able to tackle one of the LAFC players. But I think defensively he did great. Maybe could have been a little bit better with ball progression, but to me it was a good showing by Ostrak. He just to think he had 24 touches in just 45 minutes, and the player in St. Louis that had the most touches was Hartel with 49. So that tells a lot of what Ostrak was doing yesterday.
Conrad Wallem too. I think he had around 22 touches before he exited at 35, 36 minutes. So, you had some players that you were leveraging a lot in that back half of the formation to progress the ball. Ostrak, Wallem, in addition to our center backs. So we like what we saw from those players. Some of the trends in this game, Santi, before we go into the flow of the game, really highlight the fact that you go into this game and you're more pessimistic, right? You know that you've had good quality outings against the 2 best teams in the league, but you still haven't been able to score goals. And against an LAFC team where you're away, first of all, which is putting you immediately behind the 8 ball. We talked about the Vegas odds last week that they had predicted us to be the biggest underdog of the entire week.
Wow.
On MLS games. And you're struggling to say, all right, we don't have data to show that we can finish. We have data to show we can tie and we can draw a team like Vancouver, who now our draw last week looks better and better after they put up 3 against Minnesota, and they continue to score buckets of goals in every competition. So you're confident and you're comfortable with how our defense is, but you still don't have the warm and fuzzy feeling that our attack is going to string things together. The flow of this game kind of illustrated that, where, at the end of the day, we outperformed our XG, but in the first half especially, we withstood an onslaught and we couldn't get much going in our attack. So you're seeing that first half go by. And the reason that I joked earlier, maybe offline, that I didn't want to spend too much time on the first half is because we didn't do anything. We had the Cedric Teuchert shot at 40. And the only thing that really happened of note in the first half is that we lost a player. Conrad Wallem had to leave. LAFC had 11 shots in the first half before City had their first. 4 were saved, 3 were blocked. You had 1 hit the post, and you had just that onslaught around the 35 to 38 minute mark. Those wild plays around the Wallem sub when we were down a man. And so it was not a City team that was bunkering, but it was just that first half really made you feel like this was going to be rinse and repeat of previous instances where we're just absorbing all of the pressure that we can take, and we're not able to put anything out in the attack. Did you see anything in that first half that really gave you confidence that this was going to be a different type of City game than we had been seeing the past few games?
No, not really, because it was all about LAFC besides that shot from Teuchert, which was creating a good transition. But other than that, it was City losing the ball on its own half or clearing it, and then LAFC back at it, touching it from side to side, try to open City. But it was a very loop-sided first half, and I didn't think I was just waiting for LAFC to score at some point, and then City to open up a little bit, and maybe a second and a third will come.
Yeah, the second half was a totally different beast. And I thought one of the bigger stories in this game were the second half adjustments made. And this is continuing a trend. If you're gonna criticize, then you have to give credit where it's due. And I think one of the better things that we're seeing from Olaf Melberg is his ability to make some of those tactical adjustments, whether it's formational changes, substitutions at different times, a willingness to adapt to the game state. That's something that we didn't see near enough from Bradley Carnell. And it's something that I think it's being overshadowed by our draws and our lack of finishing games out so far under Olaf, but his ability to make these tactical subs and tactical decisions on the field. I still think that's a bright spot that is going to serve us extremely well as the season progresses. And we're starting to round into our ability to score more goals. You're wanting to see that trend continue, but in general, second half subs and second half tactical changes, I was a fan of because I think they served us well. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. And then obviously the end of the game that really swung everything. That is the biggest story to me is how this game ended on both sides. You're not talking about a City team that had been up for 20, 30 minutes and couldn't close it out. You're talking about a City team that went down a player, was tied, found a way to claw back in, took the lead, and then it was ripped out from under us because of a couple frustrating things that we're going to talk about. So without getting ahead of ourselves, let's take it back to the first half real quick and talk about kind of the one or two things that were really impactful in the first half, because there is a big update to provide for this as well. Aside from the awful City production, the one shot, there was a 0.03 XG on that Cedric Teuchert shot at 40. It was that 35-minute or so time when Conrad Wallem went down. Ben Luntz, during this time period where Wallem was down, had an amazing 1v1 save. So this is a moment where we have to give credit to Ben Luntz as well for keeping St. Louis in, because going down a man for a few minutes here, St. Louis almost conceded with a really good shot from LAFC while Wallem was being looked at. Wallem ended up subbing out. St. Louis used their concussion sub or concussion/head injury sub. This basically meant that St. Louis still had 5 additional subs they could make. They still had their 3 windows they could make them in. And LAFC was afforded a new sub. So LAFC now could make 6 subs to even things out from what St. Louis had to do in subbing out Conrad Wallem. Now, the good news here is Conrad Wallem does not have a concussion. We can report that reliably and accurately. Heard from the team after the game that it was diagnosed as an eye contusion, not a concussion, no head injury. So we expect to see Conrad Wallem back in training this week in St. Louis. That's good news. The bad news is that it didn't get to see Olaf's preferred formation last much more than 35 minutes, as this moved Kyle Hebert from right wing back over to left wing back and slotted Akil Watts in at that right wing back spot when he came in for Conrad Wallem. Beyond that, though, anything else noteworthy in the first half?
No, I think we can move to the second half. I really like the adjustments that Melberg made. That was great to see. We have been in the first few games, we were kind of talking about that and calling for that. Like, oh, is this going to be like 5 in the back, like all the way? And he's not making a lot of adjustments. But the last 2-3 games, it's been great to see some changes and some adjustments he has made. Maybe it takes a few games like to really get to know the team and know what you can do during games. But what I saw yesterday, I really liked.
Yeah, so let's look at the second half and let's frame it with some thoughts from Marcel Hartl post-game, where Hartl said post-game, he said, so the first half in total was not a good one. We talked about it at halftime, and I think if you see how we come out for the second half, it was a completely different phase. We played out with confidence, with courage, also when Ben had the ball. I mean, if you see our goal, it was a perfect example of what this team can do. We have a lot of quality. We can play out. And this goal was a perfect example. And if you get a red card and you score a goal, it can't happen that we concede another goal. So he kind of hit all the big points, but really hammering home that they talked about at halftime. Olaf Melberg made the adjustment to bring in Celio Pompeu for Tomas Ostrak, changed the shape from 5 in the back to 4 in the back. And you saw that quality really escalate in the midfield and really escalate in the transition work in various phases of the second half. The big things to note right out of halftime are that the shape moved to 4 in the back with Giannis Horn at left back, Timo Baumgartel and Josh Yarrow as your center backs, and Kyle Hebert as your right back. You had Marcel Hartl, Alfredo Morales, and Akil Watts as your central midfielders, with Hartl a little more advanced, and then Klaus and Teuchert were your strikers. But the big thing for Tomas Ostrak that we touched on at the beginning is no injuries, no concerns with performance. It was fitness. It was his tired legs that Olaf got out, put Celio in. And the way that I look at this is kind of, you're seeing a little bit of the depth play out in Olaf's perspective. You're seeing that it's not making a straight swap of keeping the 5 in the back, keeping the 3 in the back, however you look at it, and just bringing in another central midfielder, or moving Hartle back and then replacing him with an attacking midfielder. You are willing to change the shape. You're seeing that it's more than just this. This may have provided the opportunity, but you're seeing more than just making a sub. You're making a tactical adjustment, and it didn't take long for that to really show and prove its worth. 52 minutes, Cedric Teuchert ends the drought, less than 5 games in, more than 4 games without a goal against LAFC, finally ended in a sequence that I think deserves a little bit more of a look than just the goal. And so if you're joining us on our live stream, we're going to make part 2 of our attempt to show some video here. If you're listening on the podcast, I'll do my best to describe it. It was a fantastic goal. It was a fantastic pass, but the buildup also deserves a little bit of credit. So the buildup, by my count, had 9 passes that occurred when City was intentionally working it from their back line. And so, Santi, keep me honest on the audio here, because that messed us up on the live stream last week. Balls passed around all over the field. You're getting Kyle Hebert trying to take space on the right side, passing it over back to Timo Baumgartel. Baumgartel is the one who plays it long to Jonas Horn, who took the opportunity in the space to move up on the left side. And then Horn, when he crosses it into 2 players in the box. So Horn's 2 players in the box were Klaus and Cedric Teuchert up front. And the space that was created by that passing around in the back. What City was pretty clearly trying to do was draw LAFC into more of a high press. They were trying to draw LAFC higher up on the field to open up space for guys like Jonas Horn, maybe Akil Watts on the right, but definitely opening up space on the wings to send the ball a little longer. Now, Timo Baumgartel had all the space in the world, so he could have moved up a little bit more when he first made that pass to Jonas Horn. But instead, he saw the space and he delivered a pretty great pass out wide left to Jonas Horn. And Jonas Horn's pass to Cedric Teuchert in the middle was effective because I think of what Klaus did off the ball. Now, whether he was intentional in this or not, it looks to me very clearly that Klaus is drawing 2 defenders with him when he moves towards Horn and passes over the ball, or passes under the ball, as Cedric Teuchert receives it in that space that was cleared by Klaus. The way that each one of these players worked in cohesiveness during this phase, during the sequence, was pretty impressive. And it's not something that we are really used to seeing from the St. Louis side. So when we talk about like the evolution of the St. Louis offense, the evolution of these moments that they're trying to build to and working towards, this to me was picture perfect what you want to see.
Yeah, especially 2 strikers in the box, something we haven't seen a lot this year. So yeah, it was a great sequence by City, taking advantage of the spaces LA provided. They didn't press as high as they pressed during moments during the first half, which is why City, basically the first half was all LAFC trying to create that opportunity to score a goal in the first half, and all on City's field. But on this sequence, there was an open opportunity, and Timo Baumgartner, a great pass, and he saw the space, and in the end, great finish by Cedric Teuchert, which is the first City player. It took 10 games to get a player with 2 goals scored.
Yeesh. That's not way to bring us down on that from my getting our actual transition and getting our offense to flow to 2 goals leading the team. I mean, that's a fact. So thanks for keeping it down to earth, I suppose. But yeah, no, that was it. And Cedric Teuchert finishing is something that we needed to see. We had seen a few games where he had few opportunities and didn't convert. And this was one where he had one big opportunity. Second really big opportunity. The first one you could classify as big if you want the first half. Finishing is always good, and finishing early in the second half, changing the court. This was one of those 3 moments in the game: beginning of the game, right before half, and coming out of the second half. Olaf's formation change was kind of rewarded in this regard. But it is interesting to note that LAFC didn't bite on the press. And you still saw St. Louis, as much as they clearly wanted to draw them into a high press so they can create some space underneath, or at least on the wide sides of the midfield, they did it well enough to connect that. Yeah, they didn't draw LAFC in as much as possible. They didn't take the bait, but they didn't necessarily need to because of what Giannis Horn was able to do in finding that space out wide. And this also shows the quality of on the ball work that Timo Baumgartel offers in that role. So with Henry Kessler out, Baumgartel, all the confidence in the world to take this kind of scenario, whether it's 2 in the back or 3 in the back, in the center back role, and being able to distribute like that. And Giannis Horn, this on the ball work is what we've been missing. He had a few moments in the first half as that left center back where he took space and then delivered the ball over the top. There's a 9-minute mark, I think, moment where he delivered it over the top, crossing 2 lines from that left center back role because he took the space and moving up. This is what we need. The quality of players like this, good on the ball from in the back line, that is going to do service to what Olaf is trying to do. That's unquestionable to me. Is these types of players are who we need in the lineup to be successful in what Olaf is trying to do. Now, after that goal, you get 68 minutes. LAFC makes a couple subs, and what would end up probably being the difference maker in subs because of Senji Under coming into the game, and he played a part in both of the LAFC goals. Olivier Giroud leaves, David Martinez leaves, and then 70 minutes happens. 70-minute mark was the tying goal from Denny Bouanga from Senji Under, and it was a turnover by City in their attacking half, but it wasn't as egregious as the turnover that led to the second LAFC goal. This was more of a free, loose ball-ish that Cedric Teuchert just wasn't able to wrangle in. The ball was bouncing around all over the place, but it's what happened after the turnover that was really frustrating to me. This was more quintessential LAFC. This was LAFC deciding that they were just going to possess the heck out of us, and they ended up doing that really well. I'm not going to show the full thing on the live stream because the sequence itself lasted close to a minute. I think there were dang near 20 passes that were occurring. But bottom line is LAFC was trying to draw St. Louis out of position. They were having individual players pass the ball around in the final third, trying to draw St. Louis's individuals out of defensive structure. And then what ended up happening is you see the back post being left more or less unguarded, or guarded by Kyle Hebert, rather. And he was responsible for really covering 2 men. So one of the important things to note in this goal is the cross that was delivered from Under over to Denny Bouanga. Right before that happened, it's basically Josh Yarrow, Timo Baumgartel, Marcel Hartl, and Akil Watts right in front of Kyle Hebert. They're guarding space more than anything. They're not really guarding players. And you have Ryan Hollingshead, the left back of LAFC, behind Kyle Hebert outside the 18-yard box. And you have Denny Bouanga right next to Kyle Hebert on the far post. And Hebert's eyes, if you watch him, he's very clearly trying to watch both players for this goal. He gives a little eye look over to Ryan Hollingshead right before the pass. Denny Bouanga calls for that pass, that cross in the air, and then he comes and finishes it because Kyle Hebert was just a split second behind in that goal. The frustrating thing there isn't just Kyle Hebert's reaction. I think it's leaving those 2 players on the back post unguarded and covering space as opposed to the individual players. And St. Louis had been in defensive posture for so long in that sequence that concentration lapse, missing a couple players, leaving Kyle Hebert to guard what he thought was 2 players in that moment, whatever it ended up being. It was a long sequence of possession by LAFC that led to a split-second moment of Denny Bouanga striking.
Yeah, it's frustrating. And you mentioned there was a turnover before, but it was like so many passes before. Like at that point, City was already settled on defense. And yeah, like you cannot leave a player like Denny Bouanga unmarked. Give him a space and time to make that play. But the other thing I saw on the play was when Under had the opportunity to cross, he had Janis Horn at Cedric Teuchert close by, and neither of them made an attempt to press him or try to dispossess him. So that's something to
drop back a little bit more.
So yeah, that's something that was part of the play too. Yeah, obviously at the end of the day, like Denny Bouanga ended up beating Kyle Hebert and scoring, but you could have prevented that cross too. So
it's a good point, and I wonder if City intentionally did that because they didn't want to spread out their lines too high. One of the ways that City's been beat in the past is by spreading out their lines, creating more space between the midfield and the back line, especially in the penalty box, and giving space to find a player for an open shot on a quick pass. And if you're keeping compact, tighter lines, you're kind of preventing that. So that, I mean, it could be by design that they chose not to press, but at the same time, you're just asking for trouble if you're allowing LAFC to possess the ball that much, basically inviting a shot as your way to create the turnover. Like, you're not willing to engage the ball aggressively. You're waiting for them to put a shot on in traffic, and then you are trusting that you can block or clear, deflect a shot somehow, which is that's a dangerous kind of a game to play so something to watch for if we see that a little more often. Against Seattle next week, that could be something that ends up coming up because Seattle likes to possess in a similar mindset. We had a 71-minute mark where St. Louis made some subs, bringing on Simon Betcher, Makai Joyner, and Joachim Nilsson for Klaus, Jonas Horn, and Cedric Teuchert. I was a little disappointed to see Seti leave this early. I was hoping he'd get stretched out a little bit more. Klaus, he'd been playing 90, so he's obviously 90 fit, but Seti's one of those guys who Olaf had said isn't yet ready to go 90. He's recovering from some injuries early in the season. No reason to believe there's current injury issues, just fitness to get up there. And this could also be tired legs. It could also be wanting to get a different look up top, adding Makai Joyner and along with Salio and Simon Betcher. So when they left, Betcher moved up top. Joyner more or less played wide left. Joachim Nilsson took that left back role because, remember, we're in a back four at this point. And if you look at the average positioning charts, Salio more or less played on that right side, a little underneath on the right side. It wasn't long after this that St. Louis got into trouble. 72 minutes, Josh Yarrow fouled Denny Bawanga, cutting down the touch line or the end line rather. And this was one of the Josh Yarrow moments that I think sticks with people. This and the end of the game. But this was a Yarrow foul that it was no question it was a foul, obviously. He impeded Denny Bawanga. He tripped him. He was a little slow on getting the ball. Bawanga had him beat on the end line. But there were players in between Denny Bawanga and goal. So Yarrow wasn't the last man back in this scenario. However, you've got a player as dangerous as Denny Bawanga. You're Josh Yarrow trying to make the play. He was just a little behind. To me, the story as it ends out wasn't necessarily Josh Yarrow making that foul. It was Ben Luntz with the heroics on the PK save. Diving to his lower left. Post-game, Ben Luntz said about this, and I love this quote. Quote, "I think I had a pretty good idea of what he wanted to do. Alex Langer, their goalkeeping coach, and we do a lot of videos on the opponent before the game, so I had a pretty good idea. We discuss the situation. We try, to prepare for those kinds of situations to help the team. And yeah, that's why I think I was prepared and knew the rhythm. He's not going to stutter step. I knew he's just going to try to hit it hard into a corner. And I just went for what we discussed, and it worked out." This was the second ever PK goal saved by St. Louis, with Roman Berkey stopping one last year, though I think the rebounds scored on that one. What did you make of Yarrow's foul and then Lund's subsequent save?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's a foul. After you look at it, you may think, oh, maybe it was not necessary. There were other players in the box, but Denny Bwanga is too dangerous. And yeah, he tried to make a play, tried to touch the ball. In the end, ended up touching Bwanga, but that can happen to any player. I think people focus so much sometimes on. And I don't know if it may be my impression, but I think people give more judgments to players like Jarro, Hebert, Akil Watts, players that came like from City 2 than players that maybe are higher profile and came to the team with a higher trajectory and making more money. I don't know. Sometimes that's just my impression, that people criticize this type of player so much. Obviously he was involved in that play, so got the hit on it. But in the end, positive is that Ben Lund made the save, and I really like what he said about the preparation and the way they look at players that take PK. So that was good to see.
That's a fair point. I mean, I think there's a lot of criticism that goes the way of Josh Arrow, Kyle Hebert, Akil Watts. Not so much Salio, because I think there's so much excitement about what Salio can do in the attack, but these defenders who come from City 2, who were signed a few years ago, they're on lower end contracts. The thought is that they're supposed to be depth pieces, and the frustration seems to boil over when they get more extended minutes. I mean, Kyle Hebert is now one of 2 players on the team to have started all 10 games so far. And Marcel Hartl is the other one. So you're talking about the highest paid designated player and Kyle Hebert, who himself is not the lowest paid. I mean, Kyle Hebert signed a new contract a year plus ago, and it was rewarding his performance. So there's I think I like that angle, that it's probably a perception issue just as much as it is actually trusting what you're seeing, looking at the numbers and seeing the quality of work done. Because Kyle Hebert, he's not just starting over injured players. You know, he's starting alongside Giannis Horn. He's starting over Joachim Nilsson, who now has been off the injury, was off the injury report this week. So we'll have, it'll remain to be seen what a Joachim Nilsson off the injury report a week removed looks like. If it could be a Giannis Horn, Timo Baumgartel, Joachim Nilsson backline, but that's something to watch for. Will Kyle Hebert remain in that starting lineup as one of those players who the perception might be that he's lesser quality because he started with City 2? Performances are absolutely justified in criticizing. Kyle Hebert had that back post moment I just showed. Josh Yarrow had this and another defensive moment that you could make some judgments on, but you know, sometimes we are hard on them. So that's
and at the end of the day, could be plays that decide a game. But if you look at sorry,
I couldn't tell if it was me or you. I think it was me.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure.
Okay, we're fixed. We're back.
Okay, so do you want me to continue?
Yeah, go on that last thought about the City 2 guys.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, could be plays that may decide a game. But if you look at Josh Jarrow's game yesterday, he had a decent game. He led the team in interceptions, led the team in clearances, and aside from those 2 plays, he had a overall he did okay, and he was doing his job. But yeah, I think sometimes people are too hard on the guys that come from City 2 or even come from the academy, are homegrowns, and if they make a mistake, like, people maybe judge a little bit harder than what they will judge a player with more experience.
Agreed. The next big moment that happened in this game, after LAFC made some more subs, bringing in Eddie Segura and Jeremy Ebobisse, was the Alfredo Morales red card. And I don't know what else to say other than this was just a terrible attempt, terrible tackle. Alfredo Morales was already riding a yellow. LAFC had the ball. They were moving it up through their midfield. And Alfredo Morales, yeah, he had a 1v1 opportunity, but he drugged down Jeremy Ebobisse right in the middle of the field. You had Timo Baumgartel, you had Josh Yarrow, you had Joachim Nilsson up in front of him. So it's not like he was the last person back. And so it was just a frustrating moment to see Alfredo Morales attempt this tackle in midfield, right along the same area that he made a tackle to earn his first yellow card. That might have been the most frustrating thing. Is it's almost a carbon copy of the location, if not the same instance of what happened. And to have this occur at that moment at 83 minutes, get sent off. Now he has to miss Seattle, and we're still tied. It's, you know, there's still opportunities to come back and score a goal. This was frustrating. What did you make of the Morales red card, and do you share my frustration?
Yeah. City had numbers. If he had not been able to stop Ebobisse, it would have been okay. Not sure what was going through his mind, but he was teammates with Ebobisse at San Jose, so maybe he wanted to win the duel against his former teammate. Maybe I'm just making too much of it. But yeah, it was an unnecessary foul. And in the end, when that happened, I was okay. This is it. This is it. Down 10 man, LAFC, who had just made some substitutions, even though they lost that PK. Maybe now the momentum will shift to them. But yeah, it was just not a good part of the game to go down 10. I guess it's never a good part of the game to go down 10 man, but yeah, it's just the last few minutes, and where you're trying to get a draw, or even get a goal to steal the 3 points. It just didn't look good for St. Louis City.
No, but it's wild how going down a man can spark a team sometimes. Because it didn't take long for St. Louis to really find their way back into creating an opportunity. LAFC made their final set of changes at 88, bringing on Frankie Amaya for his LAFC debut. He's on loan. We talked about him last week as one of their big transfer window signings. So trying to bolster the attack, they took out Igor Jesus and Aaron Long. So they took out some of their defensive-minded players, clearly playing for the win, trying to get a goal. They were already on top of man. They were tied at their home stadium. Obviously, these subs bringing in Tafari and Amaya for Jesus and Aaron Long, trying to get all 3 points. But what ended up happening was basically St. Louis doing the nitty-gritty work they needed to do to force the issue. It wasn't just the goal on this one. It wasn't just the own goal. It was the play prior. And full credit on this play prior to Simon Betcher, who drew the foul on Segura after a pass from Kyle Hebert. Upon the restart, it was Simon Betcher who was trying to, I guess, maybe draw a foul in general. This was kind of an exciting thing to see Simon Betcher do right after the restart. And the ball came in, earning that free kick in one of the more dangerous areas of the game, right as Frankie Amaya came on. If you're watching the live stream, you're looking at Frankie Amaya here. And it put St. Louis in one of, if not the best positions for the free kick. Seeing Simon Betcher draw this foul was good situational awareness compared to the end of the game where we had some pretty poor situational awareness. It happened very quickly. Simon Betcher immediately upon that restart drew it. And what ended up happening on the free kick was pure chaos. This was, I don't know if Alex Langer drew it up like this, but pure chaos. Great ball in by Marcel Hartl. Credit cannot be given enough for the spot that Marcel Hartl put this ball. It goes in. It hits off Simon Betcher. Hugo Lloris comes way off his line trying to punch it out. Betcher hits Lloris and is immediately taken out of the play. The ball bounces around, goes off Joachim Nilsson, tries to get cleared, but then hits into the back of Nathan Ordaz where it bounces into the net. To this goal, Santi, was chaos completely taking charge. And it has to be credited to Marcel Hartl for putting the ball there, but also Simon Betcher, again, getting up and over and putting his body on the line in that moment. Those two players started this play. Joachim Nilsson was in the right place in the right time, and they just had chaos, and LAFC couldn't handle the chaos despite being up a man. And this was one of those two game-defining moments that occurred. So St. Louis did what they needed to do, down a man, despite everything else was going on, to create something.
Yeah, everybody doing great in that set piece, which City has not been as strong as it was in previous years on those set pieces. But this one was perfect, and Betcher pushing and causing the ball to continue floating there, and just Nilsson with the situational awareness. Even though he's a left-footed player, he shot it with his right foot and then tried to follow the rebound. Initially, I thought it was a Joachim Nilsson goal, and then after looking at the replay, I saw it hit Nathan Ordaz's back. But yeah, it was great to go for it at that point of the game, and to have a good play that maybe could cause chaos and result in that goal.
And on the lead up to that play, thanks in our chat for Alejandro Lopez for clarifying. Ante Razov, the interim, I guess, one game manager for LAFC while Steve Cherundolo was suspended, said in the post-match presser that both center backs asked to be subbed out. So I assume that means Igor Jesus, the central defensive midfielder, and Aaron Long, who were subbed out for Tafari and Amaya. This can also be seen as one of those moments that frustrates St. Louis fans in the past, where we go and make subs. There's an immediate set piece situation, and then we're kind of taking advantage of those new players coming onto the field. So as opposed to being able to just get your rhythm, get your run up play for Frankie Amaya and Kosi Tafari, they had to deal with a set piece situation right off the bat. And whether it was designed or if it was just those defenders being tired and asked to come off, that's taking advantage of a situation. And it's not often that St. Louis has been able to take advantage of those kinds of situations. So that's another moment that shouldn't go overlooked in the finishing quality, the actual being able to close the door on a situation where you're given the advantage. And that's something we have to appreciate for what Hartle was able to do. Betcher, Nielsen, the whole team putting themselves in that spot and putting the pressure on LAFC while down a man.
Yeah.
All right, Santi, let's look into the last big play of the game. Last big play of the game came, and this is the one nobody wants to talk about. So you have the highest of highs at this point. That goal scored at 88 minutes, or 89 minutes rather, right after the subs. So you're going into stoppage, down a man, yes, but riding the high of being up a goal. So in your mind, now be honest, if you're Olaf Melberg, and let's take into context everything that's happened thus far in the season, all 9 games, the moniker of St. Louis as a defensive first team, you go up a goal away, down a man, and you're in stoppage. What do you do? What is your mindset going into stoppage?
This is the time to shine. This is the time when you park the bus or the Polar Express, as my co-host on the Spanish broadcast, Hector, calls it. Like, I was like, okay, this is it. Everybody is going on defense mode, and City is going to defend the result. But obviously, that's not what we saw.
Obviously, that's not what we saw. What we saw instead, I would say, is possibly the most frustrating moment, the singular moment in 10 games so far for St. Louis City. If you're on the live stream, let's take a quick look at it. And if you're on the pod, I'm unfortunately going to be describing it. The play started in the attacking half, which we talked earlier about an attacking half turnover, frustrating moment. The frustrating moment in this came right at the moment where Celio Pompeu received a pass from Simon Betcher and lazily played it off to Kyle Hebert. He's got 2 defenders in the area. He seems like he has a little bit of control, but he tries to play it off just a little bit to Kyle Hebert. And obviously, instead of Hebert recovering the ball, it was LAFC that took possession at that point. Now, Hebert looks like he's trying to foul. If you watch Kyle Hebert, he is grabbing that LAFC attacker by the arm. He's taking, I think that's Under. He's taking Under and he's trying to pull him down. But instead of getting pulled down, Under creates space. And then as soon as Under gets the pass off, I mean, this was a good pass. So the quality was there the quality was there at midfield. Under had a great touch on this pass. Credit to LAFC for making this happen. But Santi, I'm going to go back to what you just said. This is your time to shine. You are a 5-4-1 in set defense formation. You should be parking the bus. You should be keeping a safety net out there on the field. And instead, what we get is, as this ball is turned over and as the ball is played into space, you have 3 defenders who are tracking back from your attacking half. At the point where Celio turned this ball over, all 9 City Field players were in the attacking half of the field, at the midfield line or above. I can't think of a more frustrating moment. Up a goal, 95 minutes of a 6-minute stoppage. So you are just needing to legitimately handle the last minute 30 of this game. Keep possession, clear the ball, run out the clock, the definition of running out the clock. And instead, you get stuck in a fast break transition defense where Josh Yarrow is stuck on an island, 1v1 against probably the best overall finisher in MLS. And he has help that arrives, but as it arrives, Denny Bawanga does what Denny Bawanga always does. He creates for himself, working the ball past both Josh Yarrow and Timo Baumgartel, creating just a little bit of space that, I mean, I don't know if anybody else on this field could maneuver that ball as well as he did, even slightly in this moment. and he gets the ball through Timo Baumgartel and Joachim Nilsson, the window between them, and he scores the game-tying goal. If you had to pick one thing in this, Santi, because I've touched on three, the Celio turnover, the positioning by St. Louis City high above the midfield line, and the I didn't actually mention, but Josh Yaro, there's also calls that, this would have been the time for a professional foul. I mentioned that Kyle Hebert tried to pull down Under as Celio lost the ball there, and the pass didn't reach Hebert. Josh Yaro as well. We would have liked to see a professional foul in this moment. What is there worth talking about a most frustrating part of this, or is it just all of them together?
I think all of them together, but yeah, turnover, lack of professional foul, but the positioning is what's more frustrating to me. Like at that point of the game where you're trying to steal 3 points and you're down a man, like just try to step back and have a safety net there in case you lose the ball, or if you're gonna play it on the other end of the field, make sure you're playing quick touches and be ready if there is a turnover. But obviously everybody was on LAFC's part of the field, and LAFC known for those quick transitions, and they have a Dennis Buanga that is good on those situations, and he capitalized on it. And yeah, you can scrutinize a lot of things that happened during the player. Yeah, obviously bad turnover by Celio. Even when you put the video, I saw a couple outlets that he could have used instead of going to Kyle Heaver, but it is what it is. But yeah, I think in the end, if you sum all of it, the positioning is the more frustrating thing to me.
You also have this moment where Denny Bwanga pushes off of Josh Yaro to create space, and it looks like Yaro as well is trying to reach for Bwanga or at least defend the arm. Tough to tell if Yaro was intending to make a professional foul at that point, and Bwanga just was able to body him off and clear space, but it wasn't effective no matter what the actual attempt was on that. And so the match ended in a draw. I think Jeremy Bobasi might have had a shot after that, but it was just the most frustrating singular play that could have possibly occurred at that moment. And it, for me, the most frustrating thing is the positioning of our back line. St. Louis, I do point to both a lack of situational awareness by the players like Celio in not taking better care of the ball in that moment. But there's no reason you have Joachim Nilsson and Timo Baumgartel especially that high up on the field. If the ball is over, if you're possessing the ball on the right side in the attacking end, you keep those guys back. I don't care at this point about stretching our lines too thin. I don't care about the space that you're creating from the back line to the midfield. This is more than just that 20-minute tactics-free zone that we talk about at the end of the game. This is all hands on deck. You protect that ball as much as possible, and you do everything in your power to prevent the kind of transition that occurred at the end of this game. The fact that St. Louis has never been in this scenario this season under Olaf could be a factor. The fact that they weren't ready for this moment. They hadn't practiced on it. They didn't have the right instruction. There's a lot of things that you could speculate on as the reason for why they didn't do this, but they weren't aware in the moment of what the game called for. This was far from creating chances. This was far from getting the ball into your attacking third. This was a totally different game and a totally different moment than anybody else that you could possibly talk about, and we didn't handle it. That's the difference, I think, between this City team and a team like LAFC. They showed that they are used to these kinds of circumstances. LAFC is used to these situations where they trust themselves to have the quality to fight back into games. They've done it before this season. They know they can do it, and they were rising to the occasion. We didn't do that. So while at the beginning of this game and even walking away with a point objectively away to LAFC is a good result on any other day, that's why this feels so hard. That's why this is so frustrating, is we just didn't rise to the occasion in, I don't want to call it a simple maneuver, a simple moment, but this is a typical thing you see in soccer games. Like, let's not make it more than it is. Teams are up by a goal at the end of games and they protect leads. This is something we're going to have to live with and have to figure out, not just how to get a lead, but how to protect a lead. I know we were down a man. I'm not saying that we didn't have things against us, but you're still in this specific scenario of how that play unfolded, you put yourself in a bad position on multiple occasions there, from not protecting the ball with the ball handlers like Celio over to turning the ball over, but also the positioning of the defenders. It didn't need to be this way, and it could have been 3 points.
Yeah, it could have been, but at the end, it wasn't. I guess positive is that the team didn't lose. They scored against LAFC, which is something that have never happened before. But yeah, it just leaves that bad taste that we could be talking about the team getting 3 points and the heroics of defending with 10 men and getting that goal at the end. But hopefully we'll get another chance to do something like that.
Yeah, and at this point, I mean, this is one of those games where the numbers just don't seem to mean much. The numbers, they tracked what we expected. So the overall numbers, St. Louis only had 30% possession. Yeah, that's not abnormal for what we've been playing as. We had 6 shots on target, 11 total shots. LAFC had 9 shots on target, 23 total shots. The XG numbers are wildly different. Depending on which site you look at, you're looking at just under 4 to just over 4 XG for LAFC, which is a massive number compared to like 1.4 for St. Louis. So with St. Louis overperformed their XG because of what they were able to do in these moments. You know, they had the set piece goal that they just created chaos with. And then they had the actual well-played goal created in the run of play by Cedric Teuchert. The shots inside the box, overwhelmingly LAFC, 18 shots inside the box is just 5 from City. So they were in, and it goes to that first goal where they were just possessing in the final third for like a minute. And they were consistently putting themselves in those positions. I mean, you're talking about final third passes in the second half. We're still 97-24 LAFC. And in the first half, it was 110-10. So LAFC was living in the final third this entire game compared to City just trying to hit the counter. And that was consistent throughout the game. When we were successful, we were good at absorbing the pressure and preventing it for the most part. But those lapses were just too much to handle on certain occasions. The takeaways, I mean, the fan base is very split. It's pretty obvious. You look at the 3-word reviews that Stu posted online, and everybody is all over the place, looking at the positives, looking at the negatives. This is a tough one to reconcile in the fan base, because you're going to have guys you're going to have people who are very frustrated that we continue to not take 3 points when we have the opportunity. You're going to have people who are very excited and very heartened by the fact that we were able to successfully score against LAFC. Cedric Teuchert got on the score line. We scored a goal down a man, which does say something to the heart of this team. But not being able to close things out really sours it for me. And so stats are what they are, and we didn't see anything that we weren't expecting to. But it's hard for me to think very clearly positively about this St. Louis City team when we let 2 extra points slip through our fingers so easily. And I think if you're going to build on things, there's plenty to build on. There's plenty of good moments that you can build on here. Not just but the health of players is continuing to get better. I don't think anyone really went down in this game that you're worried about, because like I said, Conrad Wallem, eye contusion, he'll be back. Hopefully he might be wearing an eye patch or something, but hopefully he'll be back soon. That was a joke. I'm not expecting Conrad Wallem to wear an eye patch on the field. And Ben Lunt, his performance, first career PK save, 7 saves, second highest single match total of the season in saves. Seti now leads the team with 2 goals, his 6th career MLS goal. You had Giannis Horn with his first assist of the season, Timo Baumgartel with his first career MLS assist in that sequence. That was another highlight of that. And end of the day, St. Louis has to pick up the positives and, again, work on the negatives.
Yeah. The positive is that point that the team got, and two games back to back without losing, and now another away game next up against Seattle Sounders. But yeah, build from that. I think the team, like, overall is satisfied with it has done in the last 3 games, and yeah, we have talked about it a little bit. Like, has been improvement in some areas, but it's time to confirm that with a 3-point performance, and we're still waiting for that.
We are indeed. And walking away from this, as it was Sunday Night Soccer and the Galaxy and Portland played right after us, we now have an eye on the entire league post-match day 10. City now sits tied for 11th in the West with a 2-4-4 record and 10 points. We are tied with San Jose and Houston Dynamo, 3 points out of a playoff spot to the 9th place Seattle Sounders. So while next week isn't going to be a battle of the behemoths in MLS, it means a lot to us, as does any match. But where you are here in the standings early in the season, it's meaningful. The perception matters, whether you're in 11th versus 9th place. LAFC moves to 8th, so they're not setting the world on fire either. They have 14 points, just 4 more than St. Louis at this point in time. City has a bit of an abbreviated week coming up. They traveled, I believe, back to St. Louis right after the match. The post-game presser was pretty short because of that. They will train locally in St. Louis before heading back west. Next Friday, I believe, is travel day for their match against Seattle on Saturday. It's a late start to this one, 9:30 p.m. local time with a 9:39 kickoff, as is common on MLS Season Pass. But there's one player who won't be taking the field, and that's Alfredo Morales, as he'll be suspended for the next match with his red card. And while Edu Leuven would be the obvious replacement if he's fit, because he should be in training again, talking about the positives, I guess you have to look at Akil Watts as a possible option too. Jake Girdwood-Reich is a player who is still on our roster. I don't know what else you can say about him at this point other than that. But he plays central defensive midfield in theory, or at least he did last year for us, and he did with Sydney. I don't know. It's hard to take that kind of thing too serious when you got guys like JGR and Joey Zielinski just wallowing on the bench for so long.
Even Miguel Perez, who was training with the team this week,
he didn't dress. He didn't see. I was surprised to not see him because he wasn't on City 2's roster either. But we'll ask Olaf about that later this week. We'll try to get some names. We'll try to get an idea of what Olaf is thinking or who he's considering for that position. Hopefully we should hear about that on Wednesday. Wednesday is the media training day we'll be at. So more to come on that front, at least. Around the league, really quick hits. Santi, I mentioned Portland, LA Galaxy. Portland 4-2. They beat LA Galaxy, and the Galaxy are still in a free fall. I mean, an absolute dumpster fire of a season following their MLS Cup victory. It is insane to see the drop off. Injuries or not that team is having. If you think it's rough for St. Louis, which it is, you don't want to be a Galaxy fan unless you are okay with making deals such as win MLS Cup and have the worst possible season you can imagine the following year.
I don't know. I may be okay with that.
That's fair. Now that I say that, sacrificing a season to win an MLS Cup, I would probably make the same arrangement.
Where do I sign?
Yeah, seriously. That's fair. I completely take back what I was thinking. Dallas had an amazing come from behind victory to beat Miami, whether or not they were rotating. Vancouver was rotating and they beat Minnesota 3-1. Rotations not, especially with Miami and how their roster is loaded.
Yeah.
You don't get a pass just by rotating your lineup if you're Miami of all teams. So they lost to Dallas 4-3. Vancouver beat Minnesota 3-1. Nashville dropped 7 on Chicago, 7-2, including 5 goals in the first half. That at the time I couldn't help but draw the parallel to the fact that Nashville scored 5 goals in one half, and at the time we only had 5 goals all season.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Sorry about that. And then I saw RSL took down San Diego 3-1 in San Diego. So RSL, watch out for them. Anything else catch your fancy this week?
San Diego losing at home against RSL. San Diego had been very good at home and started the season basically on fire, but now you're starting to see a team that isn't getting the results, had their first loss at home. And that's 7-2 Nashville against Chicago. Former national team managers going against each other, and I guess PJ Callahan got the better end.
He did indeed. Big time too. That was wild. So as we wind down on this show, let's look at the Western Conference. Vancouver remains the best team in the West with 23 points. Portland is right behind them, 18 points. Then Austin with 16 points, tied with Minnesota, and Colorado also with 16. FC Dallas is in 6th place with 15 points. San Diego and LAFC tied with 14 points for 7th place. Seattle has 13 in 9th. Real Salt Lake has 12 in 10th place. And then San Jose, St. Louis, and Houston all tied for 11th with 10 points. SKC and LA Galaxy bring up the rear with 7 and 3 points, respectively. Santi, any last words before we call it?
Just looking at that table, it looks like everybody's close. But I think we're getting into that part of the season when you where you start separating, or you have to avoid losing more points, and people like just thinking Seattle. It's another battle of mid-table teams, and it'll be good to not let Seattle get more distance from City. But yeah, the table looks tight aside from Vancouver, who is just dominating. Even if they have to rotate because they play CONCACAF Champions Cup, it's good. It's good competition. Even though City only got 10 points out of the first 30, playoffs are still something reachable. So let's see what we see on the second, third of the season.
Yeah, it's too early to talk about not making the playoffs, that's for sure. But this next stretch is going to be really rough for St. Louis. This is where we're going to start to get into fixture congestion with Seattle, Union Omaha, San Diego, SKC, and Minnesota, all in a period of about 15 days or so. And so that we're going to talk about that more on Flyover Footy later this week when we start previewing the Seattle Sounders and our rematch from earlier this season. Where we hope to get Edu Leuven back. We hope to see what he's up to in training and see more information on him will come. For now, that's all we have on Flyover Footy. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Fallout, looking at the 2-2 draw against LAFC. For Santiago Beltran, my name is Matt Baker. Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you later.
Vamos City!
All right. Thanks, everybody, for bearing with us on that one technical difficulty. Hopefully, the video was decently better than it was last week. At least there's no audio with this one. I know there's still like when you click play and it's kind of like blackened-ish. We'll see what we can do, get that better. But anyway, it's something. Hopefully, it adds to just us talking about it a little bit, and we'll continue to improve like we always do. Hopefully, you had a good lunch. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, and we'll talk to y'all later.